Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, Text 31. Ajata satru kartamaetro hutagnir vipranatva telago bhume rukmae graham pravishto guru vandanaya nachapasyat petarau saubalim cha. One's enemy is never born for having worshipped and offering fuel in the fire. As one of the priestly class offering obeisances, along with grain, animals, and other wealth within this place that you've entered into for offering respect to the teachers. But this was not done with his uncle. Also, text 32. Tatra sanjayam asinam paprachodvigna manasah gavalgane kavanastato vrdo hinascha netra yo netra netrayo. Gavalgan said to Sanjaya, as he sat there, seated, full of anxieties, asking, where is our old uncle that has eye problems? Text 33. Ambacha hata putra rata petarvyah kavagata surat apemeya krata prajna hata bandhu sabaryaya asam samanah samalam gangayam duhketo apatat. Our aunt on her mother's side tragically lost all her sons. Where had gone her well-wisher? Our uncle. And she was like ungrateful because of losing all her sons. And she was his wife. Her mind was so doubtful and so full of offenses that she thought of going down into the Ganges water by that distress. And of course, we are not advocating suicide. It's just sometimes people feel like it, and that's what this verse is talking about. Petare uparate pandau sarvanah surandah sesun arakshatam Vyasanatah Petrvyau Kavagata Vitah. Oh, and the last verse, there was the question whether or not he took his wife, and they both drowned themselves. But the idea was, upon my father falling down, chief of the Pandus, all of us are well-wishers. By that, the small children were protected from all kinds of dangers. And where had these uncles departed to? Text 35. Sutta uvacha kripaya sneha vaiklavyat suto viraha karsetah atmasvaram achakshano na pratyahate pidetah. Sutta said, out of compassion, that the mental derangement is due to affection, O Sanjaya. There's the distress by separation with its master, having not seen it. And he replied, being too full of grief, to properly speak. Text 36. Vimrjasrune panebyam vishtabhyatmanam atmana ajata satrum pratyuche prabho padavandusmaran. Smearing his tear-filled eyes with his hands, he organized his mind by intelligence unto the great leader, and he began to reply about his master, thinking about his feet. Now, they don't mean, oh, this dude had such awesome feet, or such weird feet, or whatever the deal was. No, it's like that what you left behind thing. It's like in the Bible, people confuse it and think that Moses was mooned by God, and it's like, no, that's not what it's saying. It's saying that what was left behind. Text 37. Sanjaya uvacha naham veda vyavasitam petrorvah kula nandana gandharya vamahabahu musheto asme mahatma beh. Sanjaya said, it's not of myself to know and make determination about your uncles. O descendant of the Kuru dynasty. By Gandhari are, O great king, I've been cheated by these great souls. Text 38. Atha Jangama Bhagavan Narada Sahatumburu Pradyuta Yabivanta Yabivandya Sanujo Apyarchayan Munim. Thereafter, the personality of God arrived, known as Narada, along with the Tumburu, and they got up from their seats, and they offered the obeisances, and said, along with the younger brothers, while receiving in a proper mood the sage. Now, one of the things that we can look at, they really should translate the names each time, right? Okay, we don't know it. Narada. But anyways, one of the things that we need to look at is that we stop what we're doing when there's a religious duty to do. Like, if the prayer time comes, you want to, or you arrive to the place or whatever, you want to drop what you're doing and, go away doing things, even if it's something, it seems nice what we're doing and all that. You just drop things as is, because the presence may be best right at that moment. Text 39. Yudhishthira uvachanam vedagatim pitrar bhagavan kavagata vitah ambavahata putrarta kavagata chata pasvini. Yudhishthira said, I don't know of myself about the departure of my uncles, O personality of God, or have they gone from this place? And I don't know about the aunt on my mother's side, about her being so sad about the loss of her sons. And she's turned to an ascetic. And just like in verse 38, God has representatives. That doesn't necessarily mean that we're looking at God or something like this when an angel or a devotee or whatever shows up on the scene. That's just how we know of divinity. It's like, to understand monotheism more, you need to understand all the forms, whatever they are ways that the divine power is manifested. That doesn't mean that God approves of every belief and behavior that people choose to do, but the material existence, the spiritual creations, this is how we know of God. Text 40. Karnadara iva pare bhagavan para darsaka atha babashe bhagavan narado mune sattama. A captain of a ship in the like of extensive oceans is the personality of God. One who can give directions to the other and began to say, the godly personality, Narada was among the greatest of the devotee philosophers. That may not be the right term, because a philosopher works out their understanding rather than operating by revelation. And sort of the implication here is perhaps there's that direct understanding in terms of revelation and inspiration. Text 41. Narada uvacha ma kanchana sucho rajanyad Isvaravasam jagat lokah sapalayasya bahante balim isetu sasam yunakte bhutane saeva vyunakte cha. Narada said, by all means, never lament, because it's under the control of the Supreme Lord of all the worlds. The worlds of the living beings, including their leaders, who were upheld by these worlds. By means of worship, they're protected. He gets together with all the living beings and also disperses them. And we can go back a little bit and think of the explanation of the sannyasis, those of the renounced order. Because these sannyasis can be ekadanda, accepting one rod, and the tridanda, accepting 3 combined rods or from a multiple source. My philosophy is really a combination of a whole series of other philosophies, and I don't mean quotes either. Certainly you're definitely a Mayavadi sannyasi, Dhira, if you've given up of yourself and your own actual doing of philosophy to just quote philosophers, or that you've made it all about the material world for itself, which is illusion. Of course, I'm not saying that my personal opinion is that the material existence is illusion. It's that thinking of it for itself, that's an illusion. Just like I would say that the worship of the forms is the hand of moha upon you. Text 42. Yatha gavo nase protas tantyam badascha dhammabeh vaktantyam namabir bada vahante balim isetu. As much as a cow is led by the thread of the nose, women are bound up by ropes in the network of scriptural hymns by terminology that conditions the carrying on of orders to be controlled by the Supreme Lord. So, we're not literally tying up women because we've read the scripture. That's, we understand the metaphor going on there. And one thing that binds people is they're thinking, oh, I'm of the priestly class, the Brahmanas, and that's my identity. Or I'm of the Kshatriyas, the warrior, the ruling class, and that's my identity. I am of the Vaisyas, the merchant class, and that's my identity. I'm a Sudra, and that's my identity. I'm a Chandala, I'm not even part of the system, a dog eater, and that's my identity. Now, these are roles we take on. Talked about insight roles, otherwise it's kind of like that if you have the insight, right? Text 43. Yatha krido paskaranam samyuga vegamad eha chaya kridetu syatam tatha evasachaya nirnam. As much as playthings can be in union or disunion, as much by the will, it's just to play a part that takes place. So certainly, the supreme is by the will of the human being. Well, what the supreme does about you, right? Whether you have been on the right-hand path or contrary to the right-hand path, and then we can look at the left-hand path and say, have you become or have you not become? Text 44. Yanmanyase dhruvam lukam adhruvam vana chubayam sarvatha nahe sochyaste snehad anyatra mohajat. Even though you think about absolute truth, and that persons are not the reality, either or not, or both, in all circumstances, it's never the subject for lamentation, due to affection or otherwise, due to the disillusionment. Text 45. Tasmad jahe anga vaiklavyam ajnana kritam atmanah katam tavanathah kripanna varteram techamam vinna. Therefore, give up, O fire worker, the disparity of the mind and its ignorance due to the field of consciousness. But how are you helpless as poor creatures and able to survive without me? Well, a lot of people think things are required upon them. I've even heard from family that, oh, you can't do basic things if I'm not alive. And it's like, well, you're going to pass when you pass, and certainly things can get done, calls can be made, and all that other stuff without, Text 46. Kala karma guna vino deho yam pancha bhauteka katham manyams tu gopayet sarpa grasto yatha param. The eternal time sees action in the modes of nature under the control of the material body and mind. These five are made of the five elements. How are others to give protection when one is bitten by the snake? As much as others, others are protected. Now, we need to remember that we may not see the means, but there could be means in another way, right? Like, people aren't going to step forward and take care of your family when you're gone, when you're here. That's your duty, right? And so we have text 47. Ahastane sahastanam apadane chatushpadam falgune tatra mahatam jivo jivasya jivanam. Those without hands and those who have been given hands. Those who have legs and those who have four legs. Those who are weak and there are those who are powerful. The living being has its subsistence. We can say that people have been fated what they're going to have in life, but as we've seen elsewhere, we need to actually, make the efforts ourselves. Text 48. Tadidam Bhagavan Rajan Ekatmatmanam Svadrik Antaro Nantaro Bhate Pasyatam Maya Yoruda. Therefore, this manifestation of the divine personality, O King, is without a second. The super soul, by his energies, are qualitatively like him. We talk about the divine qualities, and those qualities are known through certain forms, but, those qualities go beyond the limits of those forms. And he's without and within and by himself. So not the creation itself, but certainly omnipresent. And so he manifests, looking into him only, by the manifestation of the different energies appearing to be many. And yeah, there's a difference between God is in all and all is in God, and actually being confused and thinking that everything is God. Text 49. So Yamadya Maharaja Bhagavan Bhuta Bhavana Kala Rupo Vatirno Siam Abhavaya Sura Divisham. That it's present, O King, the personality of God, is the creator of everything created in the guise of devouring time. That's why in Islam and in the Druidic faith, you are not supposed to ridicule time because time is thought of as a name for God in this respect. He's descended upon the world for eliminating those who are against the will of the Lord. So there's a sent one, a Rasul, a prophet, whatever you're going to call it. Text 50. Nishpaditam deva krityam avasesham pratikshate tavad yuyam avekshadvam bhavedyavadehasvara. And he performed was to be done on behalf of the light beings, and the rest being awaited up to that time. All of you are to observe and wait what may be as long as you are in this world. There will be the Supreme Lord. So, you can't run away from the presence of God or all that. What's done on behalf of the light beings is like, well, they're, innocent, you could say. But that means, while they're infallible, is the word as well. But infallible means that they also don't get the benefit of what good that they do in the respect that like a human would, because a human has choices. The asuras, they have choices, and they have certain limitations that the other ones don't. So text 51, Dhritarashtra Sahabratra Gandharya Chasvabaryaya Dakshinana Himavata Rashinam Asramam Gata. Dhritarashtra, along with his brother Gandhari as well, and his wife, in the south of the Himalayan mountain range. Maybe that's what they called the whole Hindu Kush Himalayan, which is sort of where modern humans descend from. As stuff happened and we started making more sounds, and that kind of mixed with everybody else. But of the rishis in the shelter, they've gone. And is it something that they have developed their spiritual relationship according to their sense of things? So text 52, Srotobih Saptabir Yavaisvarduni Saptada Vyadat Saptanam Pritaya Nama Sapta Srotah Prachakshate. By the currents of the 7 rivers, certainly. The sacred 7 branches are created of the 7 for the satisfaction of the various 7 sources known by names. And so the Ganges was separated by 7. And we can also relate this to the heptarchy of the Yazidi and other heptarchy ideas. 53. Snadvanu savanam tasmin hudva chagnin yatha vidhe ambaksha upasantatma saste vigata ishana. taking a bath regularly, and people say that you take a bath morning, noon, and evening. You should probably just figure out a way to wash up after going to the bathroom, and then wash up for your prayers if you don't hold it. If you don't hold the ablution rules or whatever in between. Into that by performing and by performing the rituals in the fire according to the rules of the hymns, and fasting by drinking only water, and completely controlled the gross senses of the subtle mind, he would be situated and devoid of thoughts about his family's welfare. Well, certainly one of the importances of life is to not just make it about worries about your material situation. Text 54. Jetasano jetasvasah pratyahirtashad indriyah haribhavanaya dvastarajah sattvatambumalah. One who is controlled in the seating posture, one who controls their breath, and one who turns back the six senses, the potency that he's absorbing conquers the passion, goodness and darkness being the contaminants. Because you can't just be positive or negative or about, what you're urged towards. You go beyond that. Text 55. Vijnanatmane samyujya kshetrajne pravilapyatam brahmane atmanam avaregatambaram ivambare. Purifying the identity is by the intelligence perfectly fixed up in the field that is the being that merges with him. In the supreme, it's the pure living being in the reservoir of the sky within the block, like so the dot in the square, so the true identity, like as if he's in the supreme sky. Text 56. Devasta maya guno darko niruddha karanasayah nivarte takilahara aste sathanur ivachalah tasyantarayo maivabuh sanyastakila karmanah. Having destroyed, having been destroyed by the modes of material nature, the after effects being stopped, the mercy of God not to just leave things as a tit for tat response. The senses of the mind stop, and all food for the senses is situated, immovable, like that which is fixed up, and his hindrances are never like that. When he has become renounced of all sorts of material duties. Now you do what you need to do to maintain your physical form, but it's different when you've stepped aside from that being your purpose of life. Text 57. Savadyatanad rajan paratah panchame hane kalevaram hasyate savam tachabasmi bhavishyate. He'll probably today, O king, from ahead of the 5th day, quit his body on his own, and that will be turned to ashes also. Now, people typically cremated in those days, so, but people can look at situations and make predictions about, what's going to happen. Like, as I'm recording this, the person who had been installed as president hadn't been seen, like, I think it's like 4 days or something since anybody has directly heard from him in any way that would be reliable, and the only communication was on a Sunday, and that communication, the signature was different. It didn't contain the presidential seal, and it's been known that online account does not, it's almost everything posted there had no direct involvement of that leader. So, text 58. Dayamane agnebirdehe patyu patni sahutaje baheh Sveta patim sadhi tamagnim anuvekshyate. While it's burning by the fire of the body of the husband, the wife, along with the thatched cottage. Kind of one of the ways of the heathens, right? Heathen isn't the religion, it's the material culture, but, outside the situation, enter her husband, the chaste lady, looks towards the fire, and she looks with great attention. There was the tradition that you were nothing if you didn't kill yourself when your husband died. And you were something, the suti, if you did it. Now, they've tried to they've virtually put a stop to this, but there's still more noble families that the husband dies and there's a house fire. Because you can't, they stop you from throwing yourself into the fire anymore. But perhaps we can look at that symbolically. We can look at it symbolically as, one's of the position that you're controlled in your behavior, and there's no reason to blame you for that behavior, and you turn towards the purpose of your spouse, because a good wife should have a good spouse, and that good spouse's purpose is carried on by the wife. So that can all be done symbolically without losing anything, right? Viduras tutaras charyam nisyam kuru nandana harsha soka yutas tasmad ganta Tirtha Nishevaka. Also, with the exception of that event, there's been the wonder seeing, O son of the Kuru dynasty. There's been delight and grief that has happened in that place. When he went away to the place of pilgrimage for being enlivened. And one of the things we need to remember is that some offenses are worse than others. So, like your duty to God, okay, your duty to God, you do your duty to God. I mean, there is no real duty to anything else when that's the case. You know, obey a God, obey what the prophet has, the actual prophet has taught, and those in authority over you, so conditional by the other two. But certainly those with power over individuals don't really have the rights that interfere with that. Now, that doesn't mean that you can just wander off on a pilgrimage willy-nilly and abandon your family at any time, that anybody can do this. But, you know, there's some exceptions, you could say. Text 60. Ete uktvatharuhat svargam naradah sahatumburu yudhisthero vachas tasya hrde krtvajahach chuchah. And thus, having addressed them, he afterwards ascended to the outer space. Narada, along with his stringed instrument, the great ruler of Yudhishthira, left his instructions in the heart that gave up the lamentations. Some things, it's what we do aside that determines how well we know or take on the principles if we don't take on the exact form of the words and all that. So we work on our attachments. We work on our responses. We don't want to be ones who suffer. Sure, we go through difficulty, but suffering is not just difficulty, it's the choices on top of that. So you take that initial response of grief, but you move forward with your life. And that's more likely to change the feeling. People's like, oh, I don't feel like prayer or ritual or study or anything else. It's like, well, that is because as the time goes on, you haven't done it. Now, if you get up and do things, you find out that you are better rested. You do feel better, etc., when you actually schedule in what you're supposed to be doing.